The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was silent. Hundreds of representatives from different species sat in their seats, watching the figure who stood alone in the center of the room. Ambassador Yuna of the Valari Confederacy looked small under the massive dome ceiling. Her silver scales, which should have shined bright under the lights, looked dull and tired. She had not slept in many days. Yuna took a deep breath and began to speak. Her voice was soft at first, but it carried through the entire chamber. "Honored members of the council," she said, "I come before you today not with pride, but with shame. I come to beg." The representatives shifted in their seats. Begging was not common in this hall. Most species came here to make deals, to show strength, to argue for power. But Yuna had nothing left to bargain with. 3 cycles ago, the Drac Empire turned its eyes toward my homeworld, she continued. Their warships entered our space without warning. They began bombing our cities. They landed soldiers on our ground. They have killed millions of my people. She paused, fighting to keep her voice steady. We have fought back. Every Valari who can hold a weapon has joined the defense. But we are not warriors. We are scientists, teachers, artists. The Drac are conquerors, who have destroyed 11 worlds before ours. We cannot defeat them alone. Yuna looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. I have sent messages to every major power. The Torani Empire told us they cannot risk war with the Drac. The Nexus Collective said they must remain neutral for trade reasons. The merchant guilds offered to sell us weapons at prices we cannot afford. Her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the speaking platform. No one will help us. My people are dying, and the galaxy watches and does nothing. The chamber remained silent. Many representatives looked away, uncomfortable with her words. They all knew what she said was true. They had all chosen to stay out of the conflict. It was safer that way. Smarter. The Drac were dangerous enemies, and the Valari had nothing valuable enough to risk a war over. Elder Morath, the ancient creature who served as the council's leader, leaned forward in his chair. He was very old, with gray skin and eyes that had seen countless civilizations rise and fall. Ambassador Yuna, he said in his slow, deep voice. The council feels sorrow for your people, but you must understand that we cannot force any member species to join a war they do not wish to fight. Each world must choose its own path. I understand, Yuna said quietly. I am not asking for armies. I am asking for anything. Food for our refugees. Medicine for our wounded. Ships to evacuate our children. Anything at all. Morath was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke again. There is one species you have not contacted. The humans of Sol. A wave of murmurs went through the chamber. Several representatives made sounds of disbelief or amusement. The humans were the newest species in the galactic community. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 40 years ago. They were considered primitive, emotional, and weak. Their small fleet of about 100 ships was laughable compared to the great powers. They had only one colony world outside their home system. Yuna frowned. The humans? What could they possibly do? They are barely more advanced than we are. That is true, Morath admitted. But they have a strange reputation. When the Mithri faced a plague 3 years ago, the humans sent medical teams even though they gained nothing from it. When the asteroid hit Colony Praxis, humans were the first to send rescue ships. He paused. They seem to help others simply because they want to. It is unusual, but their military is tiny, Yuna said. Even if they wanted to help, what could they send? A few transport ships? Some doctors? Perhaps that is all you need right now, Morath replied. Some medicine. Some supplies. Someone who is willing to show that your people are not completely alone. Sometimes, hope is worth more than weapons. Yuna stood in silence for a long moment. She thought about her homeworld, burning under Drac bombs. She thought about the millions of refugees living in underground shelters, running out of food and water. She thought about her own daughter, whom she had not seen in months. She had no other choices left. I will contact them, she said finally. That night, Yuna returned to her small quarters in the diplomatic section of the station. She sat at her communication terminal and stared at the blank screen for a long time. What could she say? How could she ask a species she had never spoken to before for help? Finally, she began to type. To the United Planetary Authority of Earth. My name is Ambassador Yuna of the Valari Confederacy. My world is under attack by the Drak Empire. We have asked every major power for assistance, but none have answered. We are desperate. We do not ask for soldiers or warships. We know you cannot provide those. We ask only for whatever humanitarian aid you can spare. Medicine. Food. Perhaps transport ships to help evacuate civilians. Any help, no matter how small, would mean everything to my people. We have nothing to offer in return except our gratitude. Please, we are running out of time. She read the message 3 times. It sounded pathetic, weak, but it was the truth. She pressed send. For the next several hours, Yuna tried to sleep, but could not. She kept checking her terminal, hoping for a response, but expecting silence. The humans were far away. They were busy with their own problems. Why would they care about a species they had never met? 6 hours after she sent the message, her terminal made a sound. A new message had arrived. Yuna's hands shook as she opened it. The message was short. Very short. Just 3 lines. Message received. Help is coming. Hold the line. That was all. No details about what kind of help. No timeline. No questions about what they needed. Just 3 simple sentences. Yuna did not know how to feel. Part of her felt hope for the first time in weeks. Someone had answered. Someone was coming. But another part of her felt confused. The response was so brief. So strange. What did hold the line mean? What kind of help could the humans possibly send? She sent a message to her government, informing them that a small humanitarian convoy from Earth might arrive in the coming weeks. She told them not to expect much. Perhaps a few medical ships. Some supplies, maybe some volunteers. She had no idea how wrong she was. On the planet Velar Prime, the Drak continued their attack. Warlord Keth, the commander of the invasion fleet, watched the burning cities from his flagship with satisfaction. The Valari were weak. Their defenses were crumbling. In a few more weeks, the planet would be his completely. He received reports that the Valari had asked the galaxy for help and been refused. He laughed at this news. Of course, no one would help them. The galaxy did not work that way. The strong took what they wanted, and the weak suffered. That was the natural order of things. His intelligence officers mentioned that the Valari had contacted the humans as a last resort. Keth laughed even harder at this. The humans? He said to his commanders. Those primitives? What will they send? Thoughts and prayers. His officers laughed with him. None of them understood what they had just set in motion. None of them knew that across the galaxy, in shipyards hidden in asteroid fields, and secret bases on unmarked moons, something was waking up. Something that had been waiting, building, preparing for exactly this moment. The humans had received the call, and they were coming. 9 days passed after the human message arrived. 9 days of more bombing, more death, more suffering. The Valari people were losing hope. Their cities were in ruins. Their military was exhausted. Every day, more refugees fled underground, hiding in tunnels and caves while Drak ships burned everything above. Commander Tewu stood in the main control room of the orbital defense station. He was an older Valari, with dark silver scales that showed his many years of service. He had been a soldier his entire life, but he had never faced anything like this. The Drak fleet surrounded their planet like hungry predators. His own ships were outmatched and outnumbered. He looked at the sensor screens without hope. Every day he watched for reinforcements that never came. The galaxy had abandoned them. Sir, said Lieutenant Jiun, a young female officer who worked the sensor station. Her voice sounded strange, confused. I am detecting something at the edge of the system. Tewu walked over to her station. More Drak ships? No, sir. The signature is different. It matches. She paused, checking her readings. It matches human ship designs. The humans? Taewoo felt a small spark of hope. How many ships? 5? 10? Jiun was quiet for a long moment. She ran the scan again. Then again. Her scales turned pale. Sir, there must be an error with the sensors. What do you mean? How many ships? Jiun looked up at him with wide eyes. The sensors say over 300 vessels, sir. Taewoo grabbed her shoulder. Run the scan again. That is impossible. The humans only have 100 ships in their entire fleet. I have run it 4 times, sir. The readings are the same. Her voice was shaking. 312 vessels. They are slowing down. They are entering real space now. They are Kursoff. Taewoo turned to the main viewing screen. For a moment, there was only empty space and distant stars. Then, the sky began to fill with light. Ships appeared. More ships than Taewoo had ever seen in one place. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, spreading across the void like a great wall of metal. They were not beautiful ships. They were not elegant like the vessels of the elder races. These ships were brutal and ugly. They looked like they had been built for one purpose only: war. There were massive battleships covered in weapons. There were carrier vessels the size of small moons, with hundreds of smaller fighters visible in their launch bays. There were destroyers and cruisers and support ships of every type. And in the center of this armada was a flagship so enormous that it made everything else look tiny. Its hull was black, and its name was painted in white letters that could be seen from thousands of kilometers away. Resolve. By the ancestors, Taewoo whispered. What is this? Across the system, Warlord Keth saw the same thing on his own sensors. He stood frozen on his command deck, watching the impossible fleet arrive. His officers were shouting in confusion. His communications channels were filled with panic. Where did they come from? Keth demanded. How do the humans have this many ships? No one could answer him. No one understood. On the orbital defense station, Ambassador Yuna arrived in the control room. She had been woken from her first real sleep in days by the alarm. When she saw the screens, she stopped moving. Her breath caught in her throat. Is that real? She asked quietly. Is this truly happening? Before Taewoo could answer, the communication system activated. An incoming message from the human flagship. Accept it, Yuna said immediately. The screen changed to show a human face. It was a woman with short black hair and eyes that looked tired but determined. She wore a dark military uniform covered with symbols and medals. Behind her, Yuna could see a busy command bridge filled with humans working at various stations. Ambassador Yuna, the woman said. I am Admiral Hana of the United Earth Defense Fleet. We received your message. Yuna stepped closer to the screen. Her voice was barely a whisper. Admiral, I asked for aid. Medical supplies. Maybe evacuation ships. I did not ask for a fleet? Admiral Hana finished her sentence. A small smile appeared on her face. Ambassador, where I come from, when someone asks for help, you do not send bandages. You show up. But how is this possible? Your species was supposed to have only 100 ships. The galactic records say what we wanted them to say. Hana's smile faded into something harder. Humanity has spent the last 40 years watching how this galaxy works. We watched the strong prey on the weak. We watched entire species die because no one cared enough to save them. We learned that in this galaxy, no one comes to rescue you. No one protects the helpless. So we prepared. She leaned forward slightly. We built in secret. Shipyards hidden in asteroid belts where no one thought to look. Training bases on moons that do not appear on any map. We let the galaxy think we were primitive because it was useful. But we never stopped building. We never stopped getting ready for the day when someone would need us. Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes. But why? Why would you do this for us? You gain nothing from helping us. We cannot pay you. We cannot offer you anything. We are just, you are people, Hana interrupted gently. You are scared, and you are dying, and you asked for help. That is enough. That is all that matters. She straightened in her chair. My government has authorized full military intervention. I have 312 combat vessels, 40,000 ground troops, and enough supplies to feed your civilian population for 2 years. We are here to fight. We are here to win. And we are not leaving until the Drakh are gone from your world. Yuna could not speak. She stood there, with tears running down her silver scales, unable to find words. Commander Tewu stepped forward. Admiral, the Drakh have 180 warships in this system. They are dangerous fighters. Are you certain you want to engage them? Hana's expression did not change. Commander, we did not cross half the galaxy to watch. My people do not back down from bullies. We never have. She turned to look at something off-screen. All ships. This is Admiral Hana. Battle stations. We move on the Drakh fleet in 1 hour. On the Drakh flagship, Warlord Keth watched the human fleet begin to move into attack formation. His hands were gripping his command chair so hard that his claws left marks in the metal. They are actually going to attack us, one of his officers said in disbelief. They are mad. They are humans, Keth replied. I have heard stories about them. They are a young species. Emotional. Foolish. They do not understand the way of things. He stood up from his chair. No matter. They have numbers. But we have experience. The Drakh have conquered 11 worlds. We have fought and won against species far older than these primitives. They think they can scare us with their hidden fleet? He made a sound of contempt. Today we will teach them the price of challenging the Drakh Empire. AG. He gave the order for his fleet to prepare for battle. His ships began to move into their own formation, weapons charging, shields activating. In the human flagship, Admiral Hana watched the Drakh response on her tactical display. Captain Do-hyun, her second-in-command, stood beside her. They are not running, he observed. They are going to fight. Good, Hana replied. I did not come all this way to chase them. I came to end this. Do-hyun looked at the display showing both fleets. Admiral, we have more ships, but the Drakh are experienced. We have never fought a real battle before. Only simulations. Some of our people will die today. Hana was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft but steady. I know. I have thought about this every day since we left Earth. Every face, on every ship. Every name. She looked at him. But there are millions of Valari down there. Children hiding in tunnels. Families who have lost everything. If we do not fight, they die. All of them. She turned back to the display. Some things are worth fighting for. Some things are worth dying for. And protecting innocent people from monsters? That is at the top of the list. Do-hyun nodded slowly. The crews are ready. They know what we are here to do. They know what we are here to do. Then let us do it. Hana opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships. This is Admiral Hana. In less than 1 hour, we will engage the Drakh Empire in battle. Some of you are scared. That is normal. I am scared too, but I want you to remember why we came here. There are people on that planet who need us. They called for help, and we answered. She paused, letting her words sink in. Humanity has always believed that the strong should protect the weak. Today, we prove it. Today, we show this galaxy what we really are. Not primitives. Not fools. We are humans, and we protect our own. She ended the transmission. Across 312 ships, 40,000 soldiers, and countless crew members, humans prepared for war. They checked their weapons. They said prayers. They wrote final messages to loved ones back home. They were afraid, but they were ready. The two fleets moved closer. The distance between them grew smaller with every passing minute, and then, without warning, the guns began to fire. They thought humans would send aid. Not a whole fleet. Part 3. The Battle of Valar Prime. The first shots from the human fleet crossed the void like angry stars. Missiles left their tubes in great waves. Energy weapons drew bright lines through the darkness. The silence of space hid the violence of what was happening, but on the sensor screens of every ship, the truth was clear. War had begun. Warlord Keth watched from his command deck as the human attack reached his forward ships. He expected their weapons to be weak. He expected the primitive humans to fire inaccurate shots that his shields would easily stop. He was wrong. The first wave of human missiles struck a group of Drakh destroyers at the front of the formation. The explosions were enormous. Where Keth expected his shields to hold, they failed. Where he expected his armor to protect, it melted. In the first 30 seconds of battle, 12 Drakh destroyers simply vanished, transformed into expanding clouds of fire and broken metal. Impossible, Keth whispered. Their weapons should not be this powerful. His tactical officer was shouting readings at him. The human missiles carried warheads far more destructive than anything in the galactic records. Their targeting systems were more accurate than they should be. Their rate of fire was faster than any known technology. How? Keth demanded. Where did they get this technology? No one could answer him. The humans had learned from every species they had encountered in their 40 years among the stars. They had studied Torani shields. They had examined Nexus weapons. They had analyzed Drakh tactics. And they had improved everything. They had taken the best of what they found and made it better. Keth ordered his fleet to return fire. Drakh weapons were feared throughout the galaxy. Their plasma cannons could cut through most ship hulls. Their torpedo systems could track targets through any maneuver. For 11 worlds, these weapons had brought nothing but victory. The green fire of Drakh plasma crossed the space between the fleets. Torpedoes followed in deadly streams. They struck the human ships with full force, and the human ships kept coming. Their shields flashed and flickered. Their armor glowed red with heat. Some ships took damage, some lost weapons or engines. But they did not break. They did not turn away. They pushed forward through the wall of fire, closing the distance, bringing their own weapons to bear at closer range. On the flagship Resolve, Admiral Hana stood at the center of the command bridge. Around her, officers shouted reports, damage assessments, casualty numbers, enemy positions. She processed it all with cold focus. The destroyer Braveheart has lost main engines, an officer reported. They are requesting permission to withdraw. Denied, Hannah replied. Tell them to use emergency thrusters. They can still fight. The cruiser Morningstar reports their forward shields are down. Have the Star of Soul move to cover their exposed side. Carrier Group 2. Launch fighter wings. Target the Drakh command ships. I want their coordination broken. Captain Do-hyun stood beside her, watching the battle unfold on the tactical display. The two fleets had become tangled together now, ships weaving between each other, firing at point-blank range. It was chaos. Beautiful, terrible chaos. Admiral, he said quietly, we have lost 17 ships. 3,000 personnel. Hana did not look at him. Note their names. We honor them after. Right now, we focus on winning. In the space between the fleets, human pilots flew their small fighters through storms of weapons fire. They were brave and skilled, but they were also young. Many had never seen real combat before. Some died in the first few minutes, their ships torn apart by Drakh gunners. But others survived and learned quickly. They found the weak points in Drakh formations. They covered each other. They fought with a fury that surprised even their own commanders. One human pilot, a woman named Minji, flew her fighter directly at a Drakh cruiser. Her wingman had just been killed. Her own ship was damaged. She had every reason to retreat. Instead, she accelerated toward the enemy. Her fighter's guns hammered at the cruiser's engine section. When her ammunition ran out, she fired her last 2 missiles at point-blank range. The cruiser's engines exploded, leaving the massive ship drifting and helpless. Minji flew through the debris field, her ship screaming alarms at her. She did not stop. She found another target and attacked again. Across the battlefield, human ships did things that made no sense to the Drakh. When a human vessel was badly damaged, its crew did not surrender. They did not flee. They kept fighting until the ship could no longer function. Sometimes they fought even beyond that. The destroyer Silver Wind lost all weapons and most of its engines early in the battle. Any sensible crew would have retreated to safety. Instead, the captain ordered full power to the remaining engines. The broken ship charged directly at a Drac cruiser twice its size. The collision destroyed both vessels. Warlord Keth watched this happen on his screen. He felt something he had not felt in many years. Fear. "They are insane," he said. "They throw their lives away." His first officer spoke carefully. "Lord Keth, perhaps we should consider withdrawal. We have lost 40 ships already. Their tactics are madness," Keth shouted. "No species fights like this. No species is willing to die so easily." But even as he said the words, he knew they were not quite true. The humans were not dying easily. They were dying hard. They were dying while fighting. They were dying while taking as many Drac with them as possible. On Valar Prime, the Valari watched the battle through their damaged sensor networks. In the underground shelters where millions of refugees huddled, screens showed the distant flashes of the conflict. At first, they watched with fear. They had seen battles before. They knew how they usually ended, but this battle was different. "The humans are winning," someone whispered. It did not seem possible. The Drac had never lost a major battle. They were the terror of the galaxy, the unstoppable force that crushed all resistance. But above Valar Prime, human ships were tearing through their formation. Human weapons were shattering their defenses. Human fighters were swarming their capital ships like angry insects. The Valari began to hope. 3 hours into the battle, Admiral Hanna gave a new order. "Begin ground operations. All marine units, prepare for atmospheric insertion. We are taking back the surface." 40,000 human soldiers had been waiting for this moment. They loaded into drop pods and landing craft. They checked their weapons one final time. They looked at each other with grim determination. The first wave hit Valar Prime like a metal rain. Drop pods screamed through the atmosphere, burning bright as they fell. They landed in the ruined cities where Drac soldiers had been occupying for weeks. Within seconds of landing, human marines emerged with weapons firing. The ground war was different from space. It was closer, more personal. Human soldiers moved through shattered streets and broken buildings, hunting Drac occupation forces. They found prisons where Valari civilians had been held. They found processing centers where the Drac had been preparing to ship slaves off-world. They found mass graves. When they found these things, the humans did not hesitate. They freed every prisoner. They killed every Drac soldier who resisted. They showed no mercy to those who had shown none to others. Private Junho was part of a squad that attacked a Drac prison complex. Inside, they found 3,000 Valari civilians in terrible conditions. Many were sick. Many were injured. Some were dying. Junho was only 20 years old. He had never seen anything like this before. The horror of it made him want to scream. But he pushed the feeling down. There would be time for screaming later. Right now, these people needed help. He picked up a Valari child who could not walk. He carried her through the burning complex to safety. Then he went back inside for another. And another. He carried people until his arms could barely move. Around him, his squadmates did the same. The Valari prisoners did not understand at first. They had been taught that no one would help them. They had been told that they would die in these prisons, but these strange aliens with soft skin and small ears were pulling them to safety. These humans were risking their lives for strangers. In orbit, the battle began to turn. Warlord Keth watched his fleet crumble. 180 ships had become 90. Then 50. His commanders were dying. His coordination was failing. His great invasion was becoming a disaster. "Lord Keth," his communications officer said, "the humans are hailing us." Keth almost refused to answer. But some part of him needed to understand, needed to know why this was happening. He accepted the transmission. Admiral Hanna's face appeared on his screen. She did not look triumphant. She looked tired, sad, even. But her voice was steel. "Warlord Keth," she said, "you have lost this battle. Your fleet is broken. Your ground forces are being destroyed. You have one chance to save what remains of your ships and your people. Withdraw now. Leave this system and never return." Keth's claws dug into his command chair. "You think you have won, human? You think this changes anything? The Drak Empire will not forget this insult. We will return with 10 times this force. We will burn your earth to ashes. You will do nothing," Hana interrupted calmly. "Because if you ever threaten the Valari again, I will not stop at one fleet. I will not stop at one system. I will hunt your empire to the edges of the galaxy if I must." Her eyes hardened. "You picked a fight with the wrong species, warlord. Now take your survivors and run home. Tell your emperor what happened here, and tell him that humanity protects its friends." She ended the transmission. Keth sat in silence for a long moment. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders. Finally, he spoke a word he had never spoken before: retreat. The surviving Drak ships turned and fled. 41 vessels out of 180 limped toward the edge of the system. They left behind the wreckage of their fallen comrades and the ruins of their invasion. The Battle of Valar Prime was over. Humanity had won. They thought humans would send aid, not a whole fleet. Part 4, The Aftermath. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within hours of the battle's end, every species with access to communication networks knew what had happened at Valar Prime. The stories seemed impossible at first. Many dismissed them as propaganda or exaggeration. But then the footage began to arrive. Videos from Valari sensor stations showed the human fleet arriving in impossible numbers. Recordings from survivors on the surface showed human soldiers liberating prison camps and carrying wounded civilians to safety. Images of the battlefield aftermath showed the wreckage of nearly 140 Drak warships floating dead in space. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. In the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, an emergency session was called. Representatives who had ignored the Valari's desperate pleas for help now sat in uncomfortable silence. They watched the footage on massive screens. They heard the audio recordings of Admiral Hana's transmissions. They saw the evidence of what humanity had done. Elder Morath spoke first, his ancient voice heavy with something that might have been shame. "We were wrong about them," he said. "We all were. We called them primitive. We called them weak. We said they were barely worthy of notice." He gestured at the screens. "This is not the work of a primitive species. This is the work of a people who have been planning, building, and waiting for exactly the right moment." The Torani ambassador, a tall being with golden fur and prideful bearing, shifted in his seat. "They deceived us. They claimed to have 100 ships. They told the council they were focused on peaceful development. This was a deliberate lie. Was it?" Morath asked. "Or was it survival? Think about what they saw when they joined our community. They watched us abandon the Mithri to plague. They watched us negotiate away 3 species into slavery because it was convenient. They watched us refuse to help the Valari because we feared the Drak." His old eyes swept across the chamber. "They learned that in this galaxy, the only way to survive is to be strong, and so they became strong in secret, because they knew we would have tried to stop them if we had known." The Nexus Collective representative, a being made of flowing liquid metal, spoke in its strange musical voice. "What concerns me is not their strength. It is how they chose to use it. They gained nothing from helping the Valari. No territory, no resources, no strategic advantage. They simply helped. This is not rational behavior." Morath made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Perhaps not by our standards. But by theirs, it makes perfect sense. The humans believe that helping others is its own reward. They believe that the strong have a duty to protect the weak." He paused. "It is a philosophy we might learn from." The chamber erupted in argument. Some representatives were angry about human deception. Others were frightened by human power. A few, very quietly, began to suggest that perhaps the humans were exactly what the galaxy needed. On Valar Prime, the work of reconstruction had already begun. Human engineers worked alongside Valari crews to repair damaged power systems and water treatment plants. Human medical teams set up field hospitals in every major city, treating the wounded with technology and medicine they had brought from Earth. Human agricultural specialists deployed emergency food production systems that could feed millions. The Valari watched these activities with amazement. They had expected conquerors to demand payment. They had expected saviors to want praise and worship. The humans wanted neither. They simply worked, day and night, without rest. They focused on one goal: making things better. Ambassador Yuna spent the days after the battle walking through refugee camps that had been transformed almost overnight. Where there had been hunger, there was now food. Where there had been disease, there was now medicine. Where there had been despair, there was now hope. She found Admiral Hana standing at the edge of a camp one evening, looking up at the sky. Human patrol ships moved through the clouds above, maintaining watch over the planet. Their presence was a constant reminder that the Valari were no longer alone. "Your people amaze me," Yuna said, approaching the human woman. "They work as if they were saving their own families." Hana turned to look at her. The Admiral looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes showed she had not slept in days, but she smiled anyway. "To us, they are family," she said. "Not by blood, but by something deeper. When you needed help, you became our responsibility. That is how we see it." "I do not understand this thinking," Yuna admitted. "In this galaxy, species help each other only when there is benefit. Trade, alliance, strategy. You gained nothing from saving us." "We gained friends," Hana replied. "We gained the knowledge that we did the right thing. We gained the chance to look at ourselves in the mirror without shame." She shrugged. "Maybe that does not seem like much to other species. To us, it is everything." Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she asked the question that had been bothering her since the battle ended. "Your people lost 43 ships, 12,000 humans died fighting for us. How do you bear that weight?" Hana's smile faded. Her eyes grew distant, looking at something Yuna could not see. "Every name is written in my memory," she said softly. "I will carry them until I die. We all will. Their families back on Earth will mourn them. Their friends will weep for them. There will be memorials built, stories told, songs sung." She took a deep breath. "But I can bear it because I know why they died. They died protecting innocent people. They died stopping monsters. They died so that Valari children could live." She looked at Yuna directly. "If I had to make the choice again, I would make the same one. So would every human who came here. We knew the cost. We accepted it. Because some things are worth dying for." Yuna felt tears on her scales again. "I will never be able to repay this debt." "There is no debt," Hana said firmly. "That is what you do not understand yet. We did not help you so you would owe us. We helped you because you needed help. That is the end of it." She reached out and gently touched Yuna's shoulder. "But if you want to honor our sacrifice, there is one thing you can do. Anything. When you see someone else in trouble, help them. When you hear someone crying for aid, answer them. Pass it on. Spread the idea that people should take care of each other." Hana's smile returned, small but genuine. "That is how you repay us. By making the galaxy a little bit better than it was before." In the weeks that followed, something strange began to happen across Valari society. The experience of being saved had changed them in ways they did not fully understand at first. They had always been a peaceful people, focused on science and art. Now they began to think about other things. They thought about the other species in the galaxy who lived in fear of stronger neighbors. They thought about the worlds that had no one to protect them. They thought about the choice the humans had made and what it meant. The Valari government began quiet discussions about building a real military for the first time in their history. Not for conquest, not for aggression, but to be able to help others the way they had been helped. On Earth, The revelation of the secret fleet had caused its own kind of change. The public had been told for 40 years that their species had only modest space capabilities. Now, they learned the truth. Some people were angry about the deception. Others felt betrayed. There were protests and debates, and angry speeches, but then the footage from Valar Prime reached home. People watched human soldiers carrying Valari children to safety. They watched human medics working around the clock in bombed hospitals. They watched interviews with Valari refugees who wept with gratitude as they described being rescued from Drakh prisons. The anger faded. Something else replaced it. Pride. A sense that they had done something good. Something worth doing. The families of the 12,000 who had died received visits from government officials, military chaplains, and counselors. They received medals and folded flags and promises that their loved ones would never be forgotten. It was not enough. It could never be enough. But it was something. Private Junho, the young soldier who had carried Valari children out of a burning prison, was promoted to sergeant. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like he had simply done what needed to be done. When reporters asked him how he felt about the battle, he said something simple. There were people in cages. We opened the cages. That is all. The reporter asked if he was scared during the fighting. Yes, Junho admitted. Very scared. But being scared is not a reason to stop doing the right thing. His words spread across Earth and beyond. They became a kind of symbol for what humanity had proven about itself. Being scared is not a reason to stop doing the right thing. Admiral Hana gave her final report to the United Planetary Authority in a closed session. No cameras were allowed. No recordings were made. The contents of that report were classified. But people who were present later said that she ended with these words: "We have shown the galaxy what we are willing to do for strangers. Now we must decide what we are willing to do for ourselves. We cannot protect everyone. We cannot fight every battle. But we can choose to stand for something. We can choose to be the species that helps. We can choose to be the light in the darkness." She paused, gathering her thoughts. The Drakh will not forget what happened here. Neither will anyone else. We have made enemies today. But we have also made friends, and I believe, with all my heart, that the friends will be worth more than the enemies will cost. The session ended in silence. No one knew exactly what the future would hold, but everyone knew that the galaxy would never be the same again. They thought humans would send aid, not a whole fleet. Part 5. A New Order. 1 year passed since the Battle of Valar Prime. In galactic terms, this was less than the blink of an eye. But in that single year, the balance of power that had existed for thousands of years began to change. The Galactic Council met to consider something that had never happened before. The Valari Confederacy and the United Earth Authority had proposed a formal defense treaty. Not a trade agreement, not a diplomatic recognition. A promise that each would fight for the other if attacked. Ambassador Minho of Earth stood in the Great Chamber, where Ambassador Yuna had once begged for help. He was young for a diplomat, only 34 years old. His hair was cut short, and his eyes were calm and steady. He wore a simple black suit without medals or decorations. "Honored Council," he began. "I understand that this proposal is unusual. Defense treaties in this galaxy have always been between equals. They have always been about mutual benefit. What we propose is different." He paused, looking around the chamber at the representatives of dozens of species. "The Valari cannot protect us. Their military is small. Their technology is limited. In terms of pure power, this treaty benefits us almost nothing." He smiled slightly. "And that is exactly the point." Murmurs ran through the chamber. Several representatives exchanged confused glances. "For too long," Minho continued, "this galaxy has operated on a simple rule. The strong take what they want. The weak suffer. Alliances are formed based on what each side can gain. No one helps others simply because they need help." He straightened his shoulders. "Humanity rejects this way of thinking. We believe that true strength is not measured by what you can take, but by what you are willing to give." We helped the Volari not because they could pay us, but because they needed us. We signed this treaty not because they can protect us, but because they deserve protection." Elder Morath leaned forward. "Ambassador Minho, your words are noble. But the galaxy does not run on noble words. Other species will see this treaty as weakness. They will think humanity is foolish. They may test you." "Let them test us," Minho replied quietly. "We have been tested before. We will be tested again. And each time, we will show them the same answer. Humanity stands by its friends." The treaty was signed 3 days later. It was called the Compact of Stars, and it promised that any attack on Volari territory would be treated as an attack on Earth itself. In exchange, the Volari agreed to share scientific research and provide diplomatic support in council matters. Many in the galaxy called it meaningless. The Volari had so little to offer. But within weeks, something unexpected began to happen. Other species started asking questions. The Marathi were a small, peaceful people who had lived in fear of their aggressive neighbors for centuries. Their ambassador quietly approached Minho at a diplomatic gathering. "Is it true?" she asked. "What you did for the Volari? You would truly fight for those who cannot fight for themselves?" "Yes," Minho said simply. Would you consider extending such protection to others? To us?" Similar requests came from the Tolani, a species of aquatic beings whose homeworld was threatened by resource extraction operations from larger powers. From the Venthi, whose colony worlds had been slowly absorbed by the Torani Empire over decades. From the Keshari, who had survived a genocide 50 years ago and still lived in hiding. The galaxy, it seemed, was full of species who had been waiting their entire histories for someone to help them. Now, for the first time, someone was willing. By the end of the year, humanity had signed similar defense compacts with 7 other species. None of them were powerful. None of them had valuable resources or strategic importance. All of them had been victims of the galaxy's cruelty for too long. The established powers watched this development with growing concern. The Torani Empire, which had dominated galactic politics for millennia, saw their influence shrinking as small species turned to humanity for protection instead of them. The Nexus Collective, which controlled most interstellar trade, found that their economic leverage worked less well against species who had powerful friends. Some began to speak of humanity as a threat, a destabilizing force, a danger to the established order. Others, quietly, began to wonder if the established order deserved to be destabilized. The Drak Empire had retreated to its core systems after the humiliation at Valar Prime. Emperor Vrath had executed Warlord Keth for his failure and began fortifying his borders. He understood that humanity was dangerous in a way he had never encountered before. Not because of their weapons or their numbers, but because of their ideas. The Drak had always relied on fear. They conquered because no one was willing to fight back. They enslaved because no one cared enough to stop them. But if humanity would fight for strangers, if they would die for people they had never met, then fear no longer worked. Vrath sent secret messages to other powers, warning them of the human threat. "If we do not stop them now," he wrote, "their ideology will spread. Species will begin to believe that they deserve protection. They will begin to resist. The order of the galaxy will collapse." Some agreed with him, others did not, but everyone was watching. On Earth, life had changed in subtle but important ways. The revelation of the secret fleet had led to massive changes in government. New leaders were elected who promised transparency and continued commitment to protecting the vulnerable. The military, once hidden, was now celebrated. Recruitment for the space forces reached all-time highs, but not everyone joined for glory or adventure. Many joined because of what they had seen on the footage from Velar Prime. The image of young Sergeant Junho carrying a Volari child through a burning building had become one of the most famous photographs in human history. Millions of young people saw that image and wanted to be like him. They wanted to be the ones who helped. Admiral Hanna retired from active command and became an instructor at the military academy. She taught courses on strategy and tactics, but her most popular class was simply called Ethics of Intervention. In it, she discussed when and why force should be used to help others. The class was always full. The waiting list was always long. She never forgot the names of those who died under her command. Every year, on the anniversary of the Battle of Velar Prime, she visited the memorial that had been built in the capital. She read each name aloud. It took several hours. She did it anyway. On Velar Prime, the reconstruction was nearly complete. Cities had been rebuilt. Refugees had returned to their homes. The scars of the invasion were fading, though they would never fully disappear. Ambassador Yuna had become one of the most famous people in the galaxy. Her plea for help, once seen as pathetic, was now viewed as the moment that changed everything. She gave speeches across many worlds, telling her story, explaining what the humans had done and what it meant. "They taught us that we matter," she said in one famous address. "Not because we are strong, not because we have something to offer, simply because we exist, simply because we are alive. That is a revolutionary idea in this galaxy, and I believe it is an idea whose time has come." Her daughter, now several years older, asked her one evening why she spent so much time traveling and speaking. "Because I owe a debt," Yuna replied. "But you said the humans told you there was no debt." Yuna smiled. "They did, and they meant it. But I choose to repay them anyway. Not because I have to, but because I want to. That is what they taught me. You help others because you want to. Because it is right. Because the universe is a little bit better when people take care of each other." She pulled her daughter close and pointed up at the sky, where human patrol ships still maintained their vigil. "See those ships? Those humans came from a world we had never visited, to save people they had never met. They lost friends. They lost family. They could have stayed home and been safe, but they came anyway." Her daughter was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Why?" It was the question everyone in the galaxy was asking. Why would anyone do what the humans did? Why would they sacrifice so much for strangers? Yuna had thought about this question for a long time. She had talked to Admiral Hana about it. She had talked to soldiers and doctors and engineers. She had read about human history and culture and philosophy, and she had finally found an answer that made sense to her. "Because they remember," she said. "They remember being small. They remember being afraid. They remember when no one helped them. And they promised themselves that if they ever had the power to help others, they would never let anyone else feel that way." She looked at her daughter with serious eyes. "The universe is full of darkness, full of cruelty, full of beings who take and destroy and care nothing for the suffering of others. But it is also full of light, full of beings who give and build and protect. The humans showed us that we get to choose which one we want to be." The evening sky grew darker. Stars appeared above them, thousands of points of light representing thousands of worlds. Somewhere out there, the Drakh were nursing their wounds and planning revenge. Somewhere out there, great powers were debating how to respond to humanity's rise. Somewhere out there, the old order was crumbling and a new one was being born. But on Velar Prime, a mother and daughter sat together in peace. Above them, guardian ships kept watch. Around them, a wounded world was healing. And across the galaxy, species who had lived in fear were beginning to believe that things could be different, that the strong could protect the weak, that help could come without a price, that they did not have to be alone. The humans had sent a fleet when everyone expected a few supply ships. In doing so, they had started a revolution. The story was far from over. There would be more battles, more sacrifices, more difficult choices. The path ahead was uncertain and dangerous, but one thing had changed forever. The galaxy now knew that humanity was watching, that humanity would answer calls for help, that humanity would fight for those who could not fight for themselves. And that knowledge, more than any weapon or any fleet, had the power to change everything. The stars shone down on countless worlds that night. And for the first time, in a very long time, some of those worlds looked up at those stars with hope instead of fear, because the humans were out there, and they protected their own.